The sky above the Bay of Naples turned black in the middle of the day. It was late August in the year 79, and for the thousands of people living in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, it was an ordinary morning. In the bustling port city of Pompeii, shopkeepers were opening their stalls. In the elegant seaside resort of Herculaneum, families were enjoying the view. No one knew the mountain above them was not a mountain at all, but a volcano, and it was about to wake up. By the time the sun set, both cities would be buried, and the world would be changed forever. Today, we are going to uncover the complete story of the Vesuvius Eruption, a journey that will take us from the volcano's violent science to the haunting human stories it left behind. You will walk away with a profound understanding of how a single day erased one world and perfectly preserved it for another. We will see how a routine morning turned into a fight for survival and discover what the silent ruins have been trying to tell us for centuries. What do you believe is the most important lesson a forgotten city can teach us? From the air, the Bay of Naples looks like paradise, a sweeping blue crescent embraced by green hills, its shores dotted with towns. At its northern head, a single, gentle peak rises from the landscape. It slopes a patchwork of vineyards and forests. To the Romans living there, this was simply Mons Vesuvius, a fertile mountain and a scenic backdrop. It was not a threat, it was home. The very word volcano did not exist in Latin, for the concept of a mountain that could destroy itself was beyond their imagination. They believed the giant was asleep forever, its fires extinguished in a mythical past. They built their villas on its rich soil, planted grapes in its ash, and never once looked up with fear. But the ground beneath their feet had been whispering warnings for years. 17 years before the Great Eruption, in the year 62, a massive earthquake struck the region. It shattered Pompeii, toppling temples, collapsing homes, and cracking the very aqueducts that fed the city's fountains. The damage was so severe that repairs were still ongoing nearly 2 decades later. Today, we recognize those tremors for what they were, foreshocks, the mountain groaning as pressure built in its hidden heart. But to the Romans, it was just bad luck, a tremor from the gods to be repaired and forgotten. They had no science of plate tectonics, no understanding of magma chambers. Their world was one of myth and portent, where unusual events were signs from the gods, not data points from the earth. So when the ground shook, they rebuilt. When springs mysteriously dried up, they dug new wells. When dogs howled and birds fell silent in the days before the eruption, they might have seen it as an omen, but never as a countdown. They were living on a geological time bomb, tending its slopes and admiring its view, completely unaware that the mountain they trusted was about to rewrite their history in stone and ash. The morning of August 24th dawned bright and clear. For the residents of Pompeii and Herculaneum, it was another day for the market, the baths, or the workshop. Then, around 1 in the afternoon, the mountain spoke. With a cataclysmic roar, the summit of Vesuvius tore itself apart. A colossal column of superheated gas, ash, and rock exploded upward, punching through the atmosphere at incredible speed. This was the beginning of the Plinian phase, named for Pliny the Younger, who would later describe it. The cloud rose over 20 miles high, a terrifying mushroom-shaped pillar visible for hundreds of miles. For those watching in horror, it looked like a stone pine tree, dark and impossibly tall against the blue sky. But this was no harmless cloud. It was the volcano's breath, and it was filled with death. For the next several hours, the wind, blowing steadily to the southeast, began to rain down a hellish snowfall. This was not soft snow, but pumice, lightweight volcanic rock, and dense ash. It fell in an unending, suffocating torrent. At first, the pieces were small, like gravel, tapping on rooftops, but the fall grew heavier and heavier. Within hours, the sky was black as midnight, and the pumice stones were as large as fists. The weight on the roofs of Pompeii became unbearable. One by one, they began to cave in, crushing those hiding inside. The air filled with choking dust, making each breath a struggle. People tied pillows to their heads with cloth, a desperate and futile shield against the raining rock. By late afternoon, the streets were buried under several feet of debris, a gray, deepening sea that made escape a nightmare of stumbling and sinking. But the mountain was just getting started. As night fell, the eruption entered its most lethal phase. The towering column of ash, now incredibly dense, began to collapse under its own weight. This created the first of several pyroclastic surges, a term we use today for a fast-moving, ground-hugging avalanche of superheated gas, ash, and rock fragments. These surges can travel at speeds over 100 miles per hour, with temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The first one slammed into Herculaneum, which sat closer to the volcano's base. The seafront town was not buried slowly by falling ash. It was vaporized in an instant. The surge incinerated everything and everyone in its path, then deposited a layer of fine ash that carbonized organic material, preserving haunting shape. Hours later, a series of these surges reached Pompeii. The people who had survived the long hours of pumice fall, huddled in the deepest rooms of their homes, met a swift and absolute end. The hot gas penetrated every space, causing instant death by thermal shock and suffocation. This multi-phase assault is what made the eruption so comprehensively destructive, a 1-2 punch of burial and then annihilation that left no chance for those who stayed behind. The timeline was not a single event, but a relentless, escalating siege that lasted over 18 hours, transforming a vibrant region into a silent, smoldering tomb. That terrifying pine tree of ash Pliny described was a textbook Plinian eruption, a term volcanologists still use today. To understand its unique and horrifying power, we need to think about what was happening deep inside the mountain. Imagine magma, that molten rock from the Earth's mantle, slowly rising through a crack in the crust. As it rises, the pressure around it decreases, and gases dissolved within it, like water vapor and carbon dioxide, begin to bubble out, just like when you unscrew the cap on a shaken soda bottle. But in Vesuvius's case, the magma was especially thick and sticky, a type called andesite. This sticky magma acted like a plug, trapping those expanding gases. Pressure built and built over centuries until the geological cap simply could not hold. The result was not a gentle flow, but a catastrophic explosion. The entire magma column was violently fragmented into billions of pieces, from fine powder to the porous, lightweight rock we call pumice. This is what created that colossal vertical column, a jet of hot gas and debris rocketing skyward at supersonic speed. For hours, this column was sustained, acting like a giant conveyor belt hurling material into the atmosphere where the wind could catch it and blanket Pompeii. But the most deadly phase begins when this towering column can no longer support its own weight. It collapses. This collapse creates pyroclastic density currents, those avalanches of searing gas and rock that race down the mountain slope. Think of it not as lava flowing, but as a hurricane made of ash, moving faster than a car on a highway and hot enough to instantly vaporize organic matter. This is what makes a Plinian event so uniquely destructive. It is not one disaster, but a sequence, a sustained vertical blast that shifts into a horizontal, ground-scorching surge. Contrast this with the gentle, oozing lava flows of a Hawaiian volcano, which people can often outwalk, or the smaller, shorter-lived explosions of other types. A Plinian eruption is a full system failure of a volcano, an explosive decompression that unleashes the mountain's entire pent-up fury in a multi-stage assault. It is the difference between a campfire and a fuel air bomb. The residents of the bay had no concept of this mechanics, of gas solubility or column collapse. They only knew the sky had turned to stone and the wind had become fire. Across the bay, one man saw that terrifying cloud and made a fateful decision. Pliny the Elder was not just any observer. He was the commander of the Roman fleet at Misenum, a celebrated naturalist, and the author of a massive encyclopedia of the natural world. To him, this monstrous event was not only a disaster, it was the ultimate natural phenomenon, a spectacle of raw power he felt compelled to witness firsthand. When his sister pointed out the strange cloud, he reportedly called for his sandals, deciding to take a ship closer to investigate. But then a desperate message arrived from a friend, Rectina, who was trapped at the foot of the volcano. The mission shifted from scientific curiosity to a daring rescue. Pliny ordered his warships launched, not for battle, but for evacuation, and he sailed directly into the heart of the darkness. His journey was a slow, harrowing fight against falling pumice and hot ash that rained onto the decks of his ships. He could not land at Herculaneum, the shore was already impassable, so he changed course for the town of Stabi, further south, to find his friend Pomponianus. By the time he arrived, the situation was dire. Flames were visible on the mountain, and buildings shook with violent tremors. Ever the scholar, Pliny calmly bathed, dined, and even slept, reportedly to calm the fears of his companions with his own display of ease. He dictated his observations all the while, noting the shapes of the flames and the behavior of the ash. But in the early hours of the morning, as the group prepared to flee by sea, the air grew thick with toxic fumes. Pliny, a stout man who suffered from respiratory problems, collapsed on the beach. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, later wrote that his uncle was overcome by the dense, sulfurous air, which likely contained a lethal mix of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. Some historians suggest a heart attack brought on by the stress and poor air. His companions fled, leaving him where he fell. In his death, Pliny the Elder achieved an unintended immortality. His nephew's meticulous letters to the historian Tacitus, written years later, provide the only surviving eyewitness account of the eruption's progression. Because of his dual motives, curiosity and courage, Pliny is often called the first volcanologist, a martyr to science who sailed toward the unknown to understand it, and in doing so, gave the catastrophe a human face and a precise timeline. His story transforms the eruption from a mere geological event into a profound human drama, marking the very moment natural disaster met recorded history. While his uncle sailed toward the inferno, 17-year-old Pliny the Younger chose to remain at the family villa in Misenum, across the bay. He had schoolwork to finish, a decision that would place him in a unique position to witness the unfolding cataclysm from a terrifying yet survivable distance. Years later, at the request of the historian Tacitus, he would compose 2 letters that are nothing short of a miracle. They are the only surviving eyewitness narrative of the eruption, a first-hand account that allows us to hear a human voice from that day, trembling with fear and awe. He begins by describing the very cloud that lured his uncle away. It rose from the mountain, he wrote, in a shape that resembled a pine tree more than anything else. For a modern reader, this is a poetic image, but for a volcanologist, it is precise technical data. That tall, spreading trunk with a flat top is the classic signature of a Plinian column, confirming the eruption's massive, sustained power. His words then paint a world dissolving into chaos. He describes how the darkness that followed was not like a moonless night, but like being in a sealed room with all the lamps extinguished. You can hear the panic in his description of the women shrieking, the children crying, and the men shouting contradictory theories about what was happening, some believing the gods were ending the world. The ground shook so violently, he noted, that their chariots were tossed about as if by an earthquake, even though they were standing still. He writes of the sea being sucked backward, a detail that matches the geological evidence for tsunami waves, and of a terrible, ominous glow on the horizon that was not daylight, but the reflection of massive fires. These are not dry historical facts, they are sensory memories, etched in trauma. The immense value of his account is that it provides a chronological framework. Scientists can cross-reference his timeline, the shape of the cloud, the type of ash fall, and the seismic activity with the layers of debris they find in the ground. His letter about his uncle's death tells us the exact day, August 24th. His description of the protracted ash fall before the lethal surges confirms the eruption's multi-phase nature. Without these letters, Vesuvius would be a silent archaeological site. With them, it becomes a documented historical event. We can read his words and feel the grit of the ash, smell the sulfur in the air, and share the profound disorientation of watching the familiar world vanish under a black sky. He closes his second letter to Tacitus with a haunting line, saying that while he fears his unpolished account may not be worthy of history, he writes it because future generations will want to know what happened. He could not have known that his homework and his grief would become the single most important document for understanding one of history's greatest disasters. Pliny's words gave us the timeline, but the ash gave us the city. For nearly 17 centuries, the location of Pompeii itself was lost, its name fading into a local legend about a cursed place. Then, in 1748, workers digging a canal for a new palace struck something strange, not rock, but a wall covered in ancient paintings. This accidental discovery ignited a frenzy of excavation that continues to this day. What they uncovered was not a tomb of kings, but a living, breathing town suspended in its final moments. Pompeii was a thriving commercial hub, home to between 11 and 15,000 people, a bustling port where goods from across the Mediterranean flowed through its gates. It was a city of bakeries and bars, laundries and brothels, grand villas and cramped apartments. The initial, hours-long downpour of lightweight pumice performed a bizarre and miraculous act of preservation. It fell softly at first, then with crushing weight, but it fell evenly, like a slow, deliberate snowfall of stone. This layer, several feet thick, sealed everything beneath it in a sterile, airless tomb. It protected the city from looters, from the elements, and from the decay of time. Wooden doors, loaves of bread, woven baskets, and even fragile eggs were entombed before they could rot. Frescoes on walls retained their brilliant reds and yellows. Graffiti scrawled on alleyway corners remained perfectly legible. The ash created a perfect negative space, a mold of the city as it stood that day. When later pyroclastic surges filled these spaces with hotter, finer ash, they formed solid casts of the voids left by decomposed organic material. This is how we have the haunting shapes of fallen beams, the outline of a rolled-up rug, and most famously, the cavities that once held the bodies of the victims. Pompeii was not merely buried, it was captured. It provides a snapshot of Roman daily life with a clarity and intimacy no other archaeological site on Earth can match. We do not have to guess how a Roman bakery operated. We can walk into one, see the millstones, and find the carbonized loaves still in the oven. We do not have to imagine the political slogans of the day, we can read them painted on the walls. This is not a curated museum exhibit. It is a city interrupted, offering an unparalleled, unfiltered window into a world that thought it had all the time in the world. The silence of the buried city held a secret for over 1,800 years. When excavators in the early 1800s first tunneled into Pompeii, they would occasionally find hollow spaces in the hardened ash, sometimes with fragments of bone inside. They did not understand what they were seeing, and these fragile cavities were often destroyed in the rush to uncover precious artifacts below. Then, in 1863, an archaeologist named Giuseppe Fiorelli had a revelation. He realized these hollows were not random gaps, but perfect molds of the people, animals, and objects that had been encased in the falling ash. The organic material of the bodies, the clothing, the wooden furniture, had slowly decayed over centuries, leaving a cavity that preserved every contour, every fold of fabric, every expression of agony. Fiorelli's genius was to treat these voids as precious artifacts themselves. He developed a technique of carefully pouring liquid plaster of Paris into the cavities, just as a dentist makes a mold of a tooth. Once the plaster set, the surrounding volcanic material was chipped away, revealing a perfect three-dimensional cast of a life interrupted. The first time this was done, the workers uncovered the shape of a man curled on his side. It was a moment that changed archaeology forever, and it gave the victims of Vesuvius back their forms. These plaster casts are not statues. They are direct impressions of the moment of death, and they are among the most powerful and heartbreaking artifacts ever unearthed. We see a woman lying on her side, her arm draped over her face in a futile gesture of protection. We see a family huddled together in the corner of a garden, the smaller forms of children pressed against the adults, a final embrace frozen for eternity. One of the most poignant is the cast of a man found sitting upright, his cloak pulled over his mouth. For decades, it was thought he was simply trying to filter the ash-filled air. Modern analysis suggests a more horrifying truth. His posture and the position of his limbs are consistent with a phenomenon called a cadaveric spasm, an instantaneous rigor mortis caused by extreme heat. He likely died in a fraction of a second from thermal shock, his muscles seizing in that protective position as a surge of gas, heated to nearly 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, swept through the city. The casts of the victims tell a silent, violent story of the eruption's final phase. The lack of defensive wounds or signs of struggle against falling debris indicates that for most, the end did not come from the pumice rain, but from the pyroclastic surges. Death was caused by a combination of suffocation from the ash-laden gases and instantaneous cooking from the extreme heat, a process that left the bodies contorted in poses of sudden, agonizing shock. Even animals were captured in this final tableau. The cast of a chained dog, found in the house of Orpheus, writhes on its back, its neck stretched and mouth gaping in a silent scream against its tether. These figures are ghosts made solid. They force us to confront the human scale of the disaster, not as a statistic of 20,000 dead, but as individual stories of terror and last-minute desperation. They are archaeology's most profound gift and its heaviest burden, a direct, tangible link to the very last breath of a city. While Pompeii was smothered under a blanket of pumice, its neighbor Herculaneum met a swifter, more violent end. This smaller, wealthier seaside resort was not a commercial hub, but a quiet enclave of luxurious villas built right on the water's edge, a place for Rome's elite to escape the city's heat. Its location, closer to the volcano's base, and directly in the path of the first pyroclastic surges, sealed a very different fate. When that initial ground-hugging avalanche of superheated gas and ash roared down the mountain, it did not bury Herculaneum slowly, it vaporized the town in a single, searing instant. The temperature of that first surge is estimated to have been around 930 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to boil brains and vaporize flesh in a fraction of a second. This extreme heat did something extraordinary. It carbonized organic material on contact. Wood, food, fabric, and even human tissue were flash-fried, transformed into charcoal-like forms that retained their shape perfectly as the fine ash settled around them. This is why Herculaneum lies buried not under 20 feet of lightweight pumice, but under 60 feet of this harder, cement-like volcanic rock, a layer so deep the modern town of Ercolano was built directly on top of it. The discovery of Herculaneum was even more challenging than Pompeii, requiring tunnels to be dug through this dense material, and for centuries it remained the less explored of the two sites. But what it revealed was a preservation so perfect it feels surreal. In Pompeii, wood rotted away, leaving only plaster casts of its form. In Herculaneum, the wood itself survived. You can walk through houses with original wooden doors still swinging on their hinges, see intact beds, cabinets, and even a child's crib. Carbonized loaves of bread were found in a bakery, still bearing the baker's stamp. A leg of roasted chicken sat on a dining table, and a bag of carbonized walnuts lay spilled on a floor. This is a city frozen not just in space, but in a single, searing flash of heat. The most heart-wrenching discovery, however, came not in the elegant villas, but on what was once the beach. Archaeologists excavating stone boat sheds, called the fornaci, found them packed with skeletons. These were not the plaster casts of Pompeii, but actual bones, over 300 sets of them. These people had fled to the waterfront, hoping for rescue by sea, huddled together in the relative safety of the arched chambers. But when the final, most powerful surge hit, it filled these shelters in an instant. The heat was so intense it caused the victims' skulls to explode and their bones to crack from thermal shock. Analysis of the remains tells a poignant story. They were a cross-section of the town, men and women, the elderly, and many young, strong men who likely stayed behind to help others escape. They were so close to the water, waiting for boats that could never come, their final moments a testament to hope extinguished by a force beyond comprehension. Herculaneum's story is one of absolute, instantaneous erasure, yet it left behind a ghostly, carbonized record of daily life so intimate it feels almost intrusive to witness. The tragedy was not confined to two cities. Along the coast, other communities and grand estates were caught in the same deadly embrace. Just a few miles west of Pompeii, in what is now called Torre Annunziata, lay the lavish villa of Oplontes. This was not a town, but a single, sprawling seaside palace, and evidence strongly suggests it belonged to Poppaea Sabina, the second wife of the Emperor Nero. When the eruption began, the villa was likely undergoing renovations, or was perhaps closed for the season, as few human remains have been found there. But what the ash preserved is a breathtaking glimpse into the pinnacle of Roman luxury and art. The villa's walls are a masterpiece of fresco painting, covered in stunning, lifelike scenes. You can walk through rooms where entire walls are painted to look like lush gardens, with birds perched on intricate fences and flowers so detailed you can almost smell them. There are magnificent trompe l'oeil columns and fake marble finishes so convincing they fool the eye even today. The villa's scale is immense, with a swimming pool over 60 meters long surrounded by statues. Oplontes shows us that the disaster consumed not just the bustling middle class of Pompeii, but the very highest echelon of Roman society, freezing a royal retreat in a moment of perfect, opulent stillness. Further south along the coast was Stabii, the very town where Pliny the Elder made his final, fatal stop. Stabii was not a dense urban center either, but rather a string of magnificent clifftop villas, each positioned to command the most breathtaking views of the bay. These were the ultimate vacation homes for Rome's super-rich, designed for leisure, contemplation, and displaying immense wealth. Villas like the Villa San Marco or the Villa Ariana are vast complexes with their own private bath suites, colonnaded gardens, and libraries. They were buried under a deep layer of pumice and ash, preserving their elaborate floor mosaics and wall paintings. It was in one of these luxurious homes that Pliny the Elder waited, dined, and ultimately succumbed, a stark reminder that neither courage nor status offered any protection from the mountain's fury. These lesser-known sites are crucial pieces of the puzzle. They complete the geographical and social picture of the catastrophe. The eruption did not target two cities, it blanketed an entire region, a prosperous crescent of coast that was the playground and economic heart of southern Italy. From the commercial streets of Pompeii to the carbonized luxury of Herculaneum, from a potential empress's villa at Oplontes to the clifftop mansions of Stabii, the ash fell on everyone equally. This widespread impact tells us the disaster was a regional apocalypse, erasing a complete way of life for the poor, the merchant, and the elite in one terrible, unifying event. The silence left behind was not just that of a city, but of an entire world. Walking through a preserved Pompeian home is like stepping through a doorway 2,000 years old. The typical wealthy residence, or domus, was built inward-facing for privacy and security, centered around an open-air atrium. You would enter from the noisy street through a narrow doorway into this grand reception hall. The heart of the atrium was the impluvium, a shallow rectangular pool in the floor designed to catch rainwater channeled from the sloped roof above. This is not just practical plumbing, it was a symbol of abundance and a source of cool, reflective light. The House of the Faun, one of the largest and most magnificent villas in the city, takes this concept to an extreme. Its atrium is vast, and at its center lies not a simple pool, but an exquisite mosaic of a dancing faun, the bronze statue that gives the house its name. The walls around it would have been painted in brilliant reds and yellows, with frescoes depicting mythological scenes or intricate architectural allusions. This space was the public face of the home, where the male head of household, the paterfamilias, would receive clients and conduct business. Beyond the atrium lay more private realms, the family dining room, or triclinium, where they would recline on couches to eat, and quiet courtyards with gardens and fountains. The decor was a clear announcement of wealth, culture, and taste, a world of sophisticated comfort abruptly sealed shut. For the average Pompeian who did not live in a grand domus, daily sustenance came from the city's many thermopolia, the ancient equivalent of fast food taverns. These were bustling storefronts that served hot food and drink to a busy, mobile populace, many of whom lived in small apartments without kitchens. A typical thermopolium had a distinctive L-shaped masonry counter facing the street, with several large terracotta jars called dolia embedded into the top. These jars held the day's offerings, stews of lentils, vegetables, and perhaps some meat, along with wine mixed with hot water. You can almost hear the chatter, smell the steam rising from the pots, and see the proprietor ladling out a portion for a few small coins. At one such counter, known as Thermopolium of Reggio 5, archaeologists made a stunning discovery in 2020, a nearly intact fresco painting on the counter itself depicting a nereid riding a seahorse, and even more remarkably, traces of food still present in the jars, including duck, goat, pig, and fish. This was not a high-end restaurant. It was a working-class lunch spot, and its preservation gives us a direct, tangible connection to the simple, hurried meals of ordinary people on an ordinary day that became their last. Perhaps no site in Pompeii offers a more raw and uncensored look into Roman life than the Lupanar, the city's purpose-built brothel. Its name comes from lupa, the Latin word for she-wolf, a common slang term for a prostitute. The building is small and utilitarian, with 10 tiny rooms on 2 floors, each containing just a simple stone bed. What makes it an unparalleled historical document are the frescoes painted above each doorway. These explicit images were not mere decoration. They served as a pictorial menu for a largely illiterate clientele, depicting the various services and their prices. The walls are also covered in ancient graffiti, scratched into the plaster by both clients and workers. These scribbles range from boasts and recommendations to complaints about prices and even poignant personal notes, including one that reads, "I have copulated well here." This is not the sanitized, marble-columned Rome of epic films. This is the gritty, commercial, and openly carnal reality of an ancient city, where sexuality was a part of the public economy, regulated and transactional. The Lupanar, preserved in all its blunt honesty, strips away centuries of modern projection, forcing us to confront the Romans as they were, not as we might imagine them. Together, the Grand Domus, the humble Thermopolium, and the explicit Lupanar paint a complete, vibrant, and deeply human picture of urban existence, a society frozen not in its ideal form, but in its full, complex, and bustling reality. The walls of Pompeii are a gallery of the ancient world's soul, painted not for a museum, but for daily life. This artistic legacy, perfectly sealed by the ash, is categorized by archaeologists into 4 distinct Pompeian styles, each marking an evolution in taste and technique over 2 centuries. The first style, also called the incrustation style, mimicked the luxury of cut marble. Artists would plaster walls and paint them with vivid blocks of color, creating the illusion of expensive stone paneling, a way for the upwardly mobile to project wealth without the cost. By the time of the eruption, the fashion had shifted to the far more elaborate second and third styles. The second style broke the wall open entirely, painting fantastical architectural vistas, colonnades that receded into imaginary distance, windows that seemed to look out onto sacred landscapes. It was an art of illusion, turning a small room into a grand, open portico. The third style rejected that architectural realism for pure elegance, favoring delicate, monochromatic backgrounds adorned with slender, whimsical columns and small, framed mythological scenes floating like precious painting. The fourth style, popular in the city's final decades, was a spectacular fusion of all that came before. It combined the architectural fantasies of the second style with the ornamental grace of the third, adding bursts of vibrant color, intricate detail, and theatrical scenes that covered entire walls. Walking through a villa like the House of the Vetii is to walk through this history, where every room is a statement, every fresco a window into the owner's aspirations and the artist's skill. But the true masterpieces often lay underfoot. The famous Alexander mosaic, discovered in the House of the Faun, is a breathtaking work of precision and drama. Composed of over 1.5 million tiny colored tiles, or tesserae, it depicts a pivotal moment in the Battle of Issus between Alexander the Great and the Persian king Darius III. The level of detail is staggering, from the fear in Darius's eyes as he turns to flee to the intricate patterns on the soldier's armor. This was not a simple floor covering, it was a monumental declaration of cultural sophistication, a copy of a famous Greek painting that proclaimed the homeowner's worldly knowledge. A more humble, yet equally iconic mosaic sits at the entrance of another home, the house of the tragic poet. It is a simple, spirited image of a chained dog with the clear warning cave canem, "Beware of the dog." This was ancient home security, a colorful, no trespassing sign that connects with us instantly across the millennia. These mosaics, from the epic to the everyday, showcase a society that valued beauty and narrative in every aspect of their surroundings. The most direct and unfiltered voices, however, are not found in the grand halls, but scrawled on alleyway walls. Pompeian graffiti is the city's raw, uncensored social media feed. It covers every surface, a chaotic mix of the profound and the profane. There are political endorsements, like a plea to make Gaius Julius Polybius edile, he bakes good bread, mixing civic duty with a campaign promise. There are boasts and insults. Lucilla was making money from her body, reads one candid notation, while another simply states, Samius to Cornelius, go hang yourself. There are love notes, both tender and crude, health to you, Victoria, and wherever you are, may you sneeze sweetly. And then there are the utterly mundane fragments of life, a list of debts owed, a reminder to buy oil, a child's practiced alphabet. This graffiti is something no official history ever could. It gives us the authentic, unpolished voice of ordinary people. We hear their humor, their anger, their passions, and their daily concern. It shatters the marble statue view of antiquity, revealing a world of individuals who worried about money, gossiped about neighbors, fell in love, and got into petty arguments. When you stand before a charcoal scroll complaining about a bad landlord or declaring love for a gladiator, the 2,000-year gap vanishes. You are not looking at history, you are listening to a human being, and the silence of the ash suddenly feels very, very loud. The graffiti and frescoes show us their dreams, but to understand their daily survival, we must follow the smell of bread and the sting of ammonia. Pompeii was not a quiet museum, but a noisy, smelly, industrious town, and its economic heartbeat is still palpable in the ruin. Take the Fulleries, the ancient laundries. Walking into one, you would be hit by an overpowering odor. Romans did not use soap. Instead, they cleaned woolen tunics and togas by stomping them in large vats filled with a mixture of water and human urine collected from public latrines or pots placed in a street corner. The ammonia in the urine acted as a powerful degreaser. Workers, known as fullones, would tread the cloth like grapes, then rinse and dry it on large racks. The process is vividly illustrated in frescoes from the Fullery of Stephanus, showing the fullones at work. This was not a hidden trade, but a vital, if pungent, industry operating right in the city center, a reminder that ancient urban life was a sensory experience far removed from our sanitized ideals. Just as essential was the hum of the bakeries. Over 30 have been identified in Pompeii, each a complete production line. The process began in the mill, where donkeys, blindfolded to prevent dizziness, trudged in circles to turn heavy lava stone millstones, grinding grain into flour. The flour was then kneaded and shaped into loaves, which were baked in wood-fired ovens remarkably similar to modern brick pizza ovens. In one bakery, the skeletons of several donkeys were found still in their mill, a tragic snapshot of the eruption's suddenness. And the evidence of their trade is everywhere. Carbonized loaves, perfectly round with a divided center, were discovered in the ovens of the bakery of Modestus. These were not artisanal boutiques, but high-volume operations feeding a city, their charred remains proving the ovens were actively firing when the mountain exploded. Perhaps the most famous export, the Roman Empire's ubiquitous condiment, was garum. This fermented fish sauce was the ketchup of the ancient world, used in almost every dish. Production facilities lined the waterfront. The process was simple but potent. Fish guts, small fish, and salt were layered in large clay jars and left to ferment in the sun for months. The resulting liquid was then drained off and bottled. The smell from these factories must have been staggering, a fact confirmed by their location away from elite residences. Yet garum was a lucrative business, with Pompeian brands shipped across the Mediterranean. Empty amphorae, the sturdy clay transport jars, bear stamps that act as ancient barcodes, telling us who produced the sauce and where it was bound. These stamps, along with amphorae containing Spanish olive oil, wine from Crete, and perfumes from the East, paint a picture of a city deeply woven into a vast trade network. Pompeii was not isolated. It was a dynamic port, its economy fueled by both local industry and global exchange. All of this commerce converged in the Forum, the grand rectangular plaza at the city's heart. Flanked by temples to Jupiter, Apollo, and the Emperor, this was the civic and economic nucleus. Here, under shaded colonnades, merchants would have set up stalls selling everything from produce and cloth to slave. The large public measuring tables, with standard-sized cavities for ensuring fair volume of grain or liquids, still stand as silent guardians of trade regulations. The Forum, was where business deals were struck, taxes were collected, and the city's wealth was on full display. It was the stage upon which the economic drama of Pompeii played out every single day. This bustling, complex economy reveals a community defined by work, trade, and the practical realities of life. A thriving organism that was, until that afternoon in August, very much alive. The numbers are staggering, perhaps 20,000 souls across the region, but in the silent halls of Pompeii, that scale narrows to a deeply personal tragedy. Within the city walls, archaeologists have recovered the remains of around 2,000 individuals, a fraction of the population, suggesting many more escaped in the initial hours. In Herculaneum, the toll was likely far higher, with hundreds found clustered on the beach alone. These are not just numbers, they are people with names, jobs, and stories, and modern science is finally giving them back their identities. Forensic anthropology has transformed skeletons into biographies. By studying bones and teeth, scientists can determine age, sex, general health, and even occupation. The analysis reveals a society of hard labor. Many male skeletons show signs of significant spinal stress, consistent with carrying heavy loads, perhaps as porters or construction workers. Dental wear is common, often from a diet containing grit from stone ground flour. Yet overall, the people of Pompeii were surprisingly healthy, with good nutrition and stature, a testament to the region's prosperity. They suffered from ailments we recognize today, arthritis, tooth abscesses, and healed fractures, but they were a resilient community. The remains also tell a story of social hierarchy frozen in the moment of crisis. In the gladiator barracks, the skeletons of several men were found, some still in leg irons, enslaved fighters left behind when their keepers fled. In the Grand Villa of the Mysteries, a woman was discovered with an exquisite collection of gold and emerald jewelry, her wealth unable to buy her a way out. Perhaps the most famous identified citizen is Lucius Caecilius Eucundus, a successful banker. His existence is not known from his bones, but from over 150 wax tablets found in his house, meticulously recording loans, contracts, and receipts. One tablet even details his commission from the city for collecting taxes after the Great Earthquake. He was a man of business, of records, a pillar of the commercial community. We can walk through his elegant home, see the bronze bust thought to be of him, and read his financial dealings, creating a portrait of a real person who calculated and prospered until the very end. Another poignant identification is that of a young woman dubbed the Maid of Pompeii. Found in the gladiators' barracks, her skeletal remains were adorned with gold earrings, a gold necklace, and other fine jewels, leading to speculation about her relationship to the fighters, perhaps a wealthy patron or a lover from a different social world. These individual stories, whether revealed by forensic science or personal artifacts, dismantle the anonymous mass of victims. They remind us that the ash fell on the enslaved and the free, the laborer and the banker, the young and the old, each with a unique life abruptly entered into the historical record by catastrophe. What would Lucius Caecilius Eucundus think if he knew his account books would outlive his city? The bones and plaster casts hold the final, brutal truth of the eruption's mechanics. For decades, the accepted narrative was a slow, tragic suffocation, people buried alive under the relentless pumice fall, their lungs filling with fine ash. Modern forensic science has rewritten that story, revealing a far more violent and instantaneous end. The key lies in the body positions found in Pompeii, and even more tellingly, in Herculaneum. Many victims are not in poses of peaceful sleep or slow asphyxiation. They are frozen in sudden, agonizing contractions, limbs pulled tight to the chest, hands clenched in fists, heads thrown back. These are not the postures of someone slowly running out of air. They are the classic signatures of what forensic pathologists call a cadaveric spasm, an instantaneous and irreversible stiffening of muscles caused by extreme, rapid heat. The bodies were essentially cooked where they stood. This points directly to the pyroclastic surges, those ground-hugging avalanches of gas and rock that reach temperatures between 400 and 900 degrees Fahrenheit. When such a surge hit, death was not a matter of minutes. It was a matter of seconds. The superheated air would have caused thermal shock, instantly searing the lungs and soft tissues, while the extreme heat caused muscles to contract violently, locking the body in its final, desperate gesture. The evidence became undeniable with a chilling discovery in Herculaneum in the early 2000s. Within one of the skulls found on the beachfront, archaeologists found a small, black, glassy substance. Analysis confirmed it was vitrified human brain matter. Vitrification is a process where intense heat transforms tissue into a glass-like state. For this to happen, the temperature had to be staggeringly high, likely exceeding 900 degrees, and the cooling had to be rapid. This single dark relic proves that the first surge to hit Herculaneum was not just hot air. It was a furnace blast that could literally boil the brain inside a skull within moments. This creates a complex and horrifying map of death across the region. In Herculaneum, closer to the vent, people were killed almost instantly by the first ultra-hot surges, their bodies carbonized where they fell. In Pompeii, further away, the first few surges may have been slightly less intense but still lethally hot, killing those who had survived the initial pumice fall. The variation in body positions and preservation tells us the disaster was not a single, uniform event. It was a wave of destruction that changed in ferocity as it traveled, meaning the final moments for a family in a Pompeian basement were physiologically different from those for a group huddled in a Herculaneum boat shed, even though both were ultimately doomed by the same eruptive force. The old image of a gentle, snowy burial is gone, replaced by the forensic certainty of a sudden, searing hurricane of death. The final pyroclastic surge swept across the bay and then silent. The sun rose on August 25th over a transformed world. Where lush vineyards and bustling towns had been, there now stretched a vast, gray, featureless plain, still warm to the touch and steaming in places. The familiar silhouette of Vesuvius was gone, its summit blasted away, leaving a ragged, smoking crater. For the survivors who had fled, the initial shock gave way to a desperate need to return. In the days and weeks that followed, small bands came back, tunneling down through the still warm ash. They were not archaeologists, they were salvagers. Using long iron rods as probes, they punched holes through collapsed roofs and walls, following the lines of buildings to find and retrieve their most valuable possessions, family heirlooms, sacks of coins, and bronze statues. These tunnels, some of which still scar the ruins today, are a testament to that first wave of human response, a grim scramble for normalcy in a landscape that would never be normal again. The Roman state, under Emperor Titus, acted swiftly. A relief commission was appointed, and funds were allocated for the stricken region, but the scale of the destruction was too great. After initial surveys, Rome made a pragmatic, chilling decision. The buried cities were declared lost causes, their lands officially abandoned. The valuable salvageable marble from public buildings was systematically stripped and carted away for use elsewhere, a final, official plundering. The surviving populations were resettled in other towns, and life stubbornly began to reroute itself in the less damaged areas nearby. Over the decades, then centuries, the precise locations of Pompeii and Herculaneum faded from common knowledge. The once familiar street grids were buried under many meters of hardened rock, and the fertile volcanic soil did what it always does. It encouraged new growth. Grasses, then shrubs, then forests covered the graves of the cities. The coastline itself had been pushed outward by the volcanic deposits, leaving the old port of Herculaneum landlocked. Rivers changed their courses, diverted by the new topography. Within a few generations, only vague local legends spoke of the cities of the dead beneath the ground. The historical record, too, grew faint. While Pliny the Younger's letters survived in a few manuscript copies, they were curiosities for scholars, not common knowledge. Other Roman historians like Tacitus and Suetonius mention the disaster, but as one tragic event among many in the tumultuous first century. For the wider world, the memory of Pompeii and Herculaneum didn't so much vanish as it was overwritten, buried under the relentless march of new wars, new empires, and new stories. The volcano had not only erased two cities from the map, it had nearly erased them from history itself, creating a perfect archaeological time capsule precisely because it was so completely forgotten. The gray volcanic plain lay undisturbed for over a millennium and a half, its secrets locked under layers of earth and legend. Then, in 1748, a farmer digging a well near the modern town of Pompeii struck not water, but a trove of marble and painted walls. Word of this buried treasure reached the Spanish Bourbon king, Charles III, who ruled the Kingdom of Naples. He saw not a lost city, but a royal quarry. Thus began the first chaotic phase of excavation, driven by a hunger for treasure, not knowledge. Under the king's direction, tunnels were dug haphazardly through the hardened ash. Following the lines of walls, insert statues, mosaics, and precious metals. It was a mining operation. Workers, often convicts, were given daily quotas for valuable finds. Frescoes were brutally hacked from walls, their context forever lost. Beautiful statues and intricate artifacts were hauled up to the surface, cataloged by number, and shipped directly to the king's private museum at the Palace of Pompeii, where they became trophies for the amusement of the court. This was archaeology as plunder, a destructive race to empty the site of its most beautiful objects, with little care for recording where they were found or what they might mean. The very name of the buried city was still a mystery, often mistakenly identified as the ancient Stabii. For decades, Pompeii was treated not as a historical document, but as a lavish, subterranean gift shop for a king. The focus was entirely on the spectacular, leaving the ordinary, the fragile, and the human stories to be crushed underfoot in the dark, narrow tunnels. This treasure-hunting era, while it brought the first glimmers of the city to light, also caused irreparable damage, severing countless artifacts from the stories they were meant to tell. The shift from looting to learning began with a new generation of thinkers who saw the site not as a mine, but as a manuscript. The pivotal figure was Giuseppe Fiorelli, appointed director of excavations in 1860. He was a revolutionary. Horrified by the chaotic tunneling, Fiorelli imposed order with a radical new plan. He insisted on excavating from the top down, carefully removing layers of volcanic material in reverse order to preserve the stratigraphy, the timeline of the eruption itself. He divided the entire buried city into a numbered grid of regions and blocks, a system still used today, which allowed every find to be precisely located and recorded. But his most famous and emotionally powerful innovation was born from a moment of careful observation. Noticing hollow cavities in the ash, he perfected the plaster cast technique, giving form to the victims and preserving organic remains like wooden furniture. Fiorelli understood that the true value of Pompeii was not just in its gold, but in its totality, its context. He began publishing detailed, regular reports of the excavations, sharing findings with the world. Under his direction, the focus turned to uncovering entire buildings, leaving artifacts in place, and reconstructing the upper stories of homes to understand their original appearance. He transformed the site from a royal treasure hunt into a disciplined scientific laboratory. The world's perception shifted accordingly. Pompeii was no longer a source of pretty objects for a palace. It became a window into antiquity, a place where one could literally walk through Roman streets. This methodological revolution, started by Fiorelli, laid the foundation for all modern archaeology, establishing core principles of preservation, documentation, and respect for context that guide excavators to this very day. The Silent City had finally found not just explorers, but listeners. The story of Vesuvius is still being written, not with shovels alone, but with the hum of computers and the silent pulse of radar. While much of Pompeii has been uncovered, entire neighborhoods remain sealed beneath the volcanic blanket, holding stories we have yet to hear. The most exciting recent work has focused on Reggio 5, a previously untouched wedge of the city near the glistening house of the Vedia. Here, archaeologists are not treasure hunters, but careful surgeons, peeling back layers with the patience Fiorelli would admire. Their reward has been a cascade of revelations, rooms that had not seen light for 2 millennia suddenly glowing with color. They uncovered an entire alleyway of elegant homes, their walls adorned with breathtaking frescoes preserved in almost perfect condition. One depicts the myth of Narcissus, the young man entranced by his own reflection in a pool, the colors so vibrant the water seems to shimmer. Another shows a sensual scene of Leda and the Swan, its artistic mastery halting work as the team stood in silent awe. These are not just new paintings, they are lost chapters of Roman art history, emerging from the ash with a freshness that defies time. But the true revolution lies beneath the surface, in technologies that allow us to see without ever breaking ground. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, sends pulses of energy into the earth and listens for the echoes. It is like giving the city an X-ray, revealing the ghostly outlines of buried walls, pipes, and even furniture still in place under untouched field. This non-invasive map guides excavations with pinpoint precision, telling archaeologists exactly where to dig to answer specific questions, preserving everything else for future generations. From above, drones equipped with high-resolution cameras create detailed 3D models of the entire site, stitching together millions of data points into a perfect digital twin of Pompeii. You can now take a virtual walk through its streets from anywhere in the world, examining a fresco or measuring a doorway with millimeter accuracy, a tool for both global education and meticulous preservation. The science reaches its most intimate level in the laboratory, with the bones of the victims themselves. Advanced DNA analysis is now reading the biological stories locked in these ancient remains. By extracting genetic material from teeth and bone, scientists can now determine not just sex and age, but ancestry, family relationships, and even susceptibility to disease. They have sequenced the genome of a man and a woman found together in the house of the craftsman, confirming they were not just companions, but first cousins, a family link preserved in tragedy. They can identify the bacteria that caused infections and see the genetic markers for conditions like tuberculosis. This transforms a skeleton from a statistic into a biography, revealing the diverse genetic tapestry of the Roman Empire, people with ancestry from North Africa, the Near East, and Northern Europe all living and dying together in this bustling port. We are learning what they suffered from in life, not just how they died. Each scan, each genetic sequence, each radar pulse is a new question answered and a dozen more asked. The mountain's silence, it turns out, was not an end, but an invitation, and we are only now learning how to listen. But the most tantalizing secrets of Herculaneum are not made of bone or fresco, they are made of words. In the same villa where so much carbonized wood was found, the Villa dei Papyri, workers in the 1700s made an astounding discovery, a library. Not of stone tablets or wax, but of papyrus scrolls, the ancient world's books. The intense heat of the pyroclastic surges did not burn them to ash, it carbonized them, transforming them into fragile, blackened logs, as brittle as charcoal. To the early excavators, they looked like lumps of coal. In their excitement, some tried to pry them open, only to watch them crumble into dust. Others attempted to slice them into segments, destroying the continuous text. For over 250 years, these scrolls represented an agonizing paradox, a library of potentially lost masterpieces sitting in plain sight, completely unreadable. The intellectual treasure inside was locked behind a physical barrier more secure than any vault, their own ruined form. The villa likely belonged to Lucius Calpurnius Piso, the father-in-law of Julius Caesar, a man of immense wealth and refined taste. His library was a philosopher's dream, filled with texts, mostly in Greek, on Epicurean philosophy. This was a school of thought that championed the pursuit of modest pleasure and freedom from fear, a poignant collection for a town that met such a terrifying end. Scholars have long dreamed that among these blackened lumps could be lost plays by Sophocles, histories by Livy, or more works by the poet Sappho, but how you read a book you cannot open. The answer arrived not from the humanities, but from the frontiers of physics and computer science. The breakthrough is called virtual unwrapping. It begins with a powerful, non-destructive scanning technology known as high-energy X-ray phase contrast tomography. Think of it as a CT scan, but infinitely more sensitive, designed not for flesh, but for the subtle density differences between ancient carbonized papyrus and the carbon-based ink used to write on it. The machine creates a fantastically detailed three-dimensional map of the entire scroll, every coiled layer, every crack, every tiny variation in the material. This data alone was a miracle, allowing researchers to see the scroll's internal structure without touching it. But the ink remained invisible, as it was also made from carbon, blending into the papyrus. The final key was artificial intelligence. Researchers trained sophisticated machine learning algorithms to recognize the faintest ghost of a letter. They fed the eye scans of already open fragments where the ink was visible, teaching it to detect the microscopic texture and density changes left by a scribe's hand 2,000 years ago. The AI learned to see what the human eye could not. In late 2023, this combination of advanced tomography and artificial intelligence yielded its first triumphant words. From a single, tiny scroll fragment, the team successfully identified two complete Greek words, porphyros, meaning purple, and chakon, meaning something of copper or bronze. They were not reading a philosophical treatise yet, but they had proven the door could be unlocked. The potential is staggering. There are over 1,800 carbonized scrolls from the Villa dei Papyri. If even a fraction can be virtually unrolled and read, we could recover an entire lost corpus of ancient thought, works that have not been seen since the Roman era. This is not just archaeology, it is a form of intellectual time travel, a race against physical decay waged with particle accelerators and neural networks. What profound ideas about life, the universe, and human happiness have been waiting in that silent villa, and are we finally ready to hear them? That digital library, frozen in carbon, speaks to a past we are still learning to read. But the mountain that preserved it never closed its eyes. Vesuvius is not a relic, it is a sleeping giant, and 3 million people now live on its slopes. The last time it stirred was in March 1944, near the end of the Second World War. That eruption was relatively small, a Strombolian event with lava flows and ash plumes that destroyed several villages but spared the major cities. For the people of Naples, it was a spectacle, a distraction from the war's horrors, with American soldiers even taking souvenir photos as bombs fell nearby. That event lulled many into a dangerous assumption that modern Vesuvius was a tame, manageable phenomenon. Nothing could be further from the truth. Geologists classify it as a Somma stratovolcano, and its history shows a clear, terrifying pattern. It operates on a cycle of long periods of quiet, followed by catastrophic Plinian eruptions like the one in 79. The mountain is currently in one of those quiet phases, but it is not extinct. It is recharging. Magma is slowly accumulating in a chamber roughly 5 to 8 kilometers beneath the crater. The mountain breathes, emitting faint plumes of gas, and the ground above it swells and subsides by millimeters each year, monitored by a network of incredibly sensitive instruments. This is not a dormant hill, it is a pressure cooker, and the lid is still on. The real danger is not the volcano's power alone, but its intimate coexistence with the metropolis. The area designated the red zone, the area at highest risk from pyroclastic flows and heavy ash fall, now contain over 3 million residents spread across 25 towns and a large portion of Naples itself. This makes the Vesuvius region the most densely populated volcanic danger zone on the entire planet. Entire neighborhoods climb the very flanks of the mountain, their buildings clinging to the same fertile soil that once attracted Roman farmers. The city has literally grown into the crater of the ancient volcano, Monte Somma. This creates a logistical nightmare of almost unimaginable scale, how you move 3 million people in a matter of hours or days. Where do they go? The Italian government has a plan, but it is a document fraught with controversy and profound difficulty. The official evacuation strategy relies on a phased alert system managed by the Vesuvius Observatory, the world's oldest volcanological institute, founded in 1841. Their networks of seismometers, GPS stations, and gas sensors are on constant watch for the precursors of an eruption, which scientists believe could provide anywhere from 2 weeks to several days of warning. If a serious alert is declared, the plan aims to evacuate the entire red zone within 72 hours. People would be instructed to use their own cars or provided buses to travel along predetermined escape routes to assigned regions across Italy, from Calabria to Sardinia. The government has even signed agreements with these host regions to accommodate evacuees. On paper, it is comprehensive. In reality, the challenges are staggering. The road network leading away from the volcano is a tangled web of narrow, ancient streets and modern highways that are congested on an ordinary Tuesday. A mass, panicked exodus could create gridlock within minutes, trapping people in the very paths of the deadly surges. Many question whether 72 hours is enough, especially if the eruption's onset is faster than models predict. Then there is the human factor, the problem of compliance. Would everyone leave? Surveys suggest a troubling complacency, a phenomenon scientists call normalization of risk. For generations, people have lived, worked, and raised families with the volcano as a backdrop. It is their home. Many distrust the authorities or fear looting if they abandon their homes and businesses. Some simply believe it will not happen in their lifetime. This psychological barrier may be the plan's greatest weakness. So, is Naples prepared for the next big one? The honest answer is that it is the best monitored volcano in the world, with a detailed plan that exists nowhere else for a threat of this magnitude. But a plan is not the same as a guarantee. It is a complex, fragile equation balancing cutting-edge science against ancient geography and human nature. The ghostly plaster casts of Pompeii are the ultimate reminder of the cost of being wrong. They are not just figures from the past, they are a direct message to the future, a warning etched in plaster, an ash about what happens when a mountain wakes up and a city is not ready to run. The tragedy of Pompeii did not end with the last pyroclastic surge. It simply changed form. As the excavated city began to whisper its secrets to Europe in the 18th century, it ignited a cultural obsession that has never truly faded. The first to be captivated were the romantics of the early 19th century, artists and writers who saw in the ruins not just history, but the ultimate symbol of human fragility. For them, the plaster casts were not archaeological data, they were sublime poetry. Painters like John Martin and Karl Brylov created vast, dramatic canvases where the volcano's fury lit the sky in apocalyptic oranges and reds, and tiny, noble figures were shown in their final, desperate moment. Brylov's masterpiece, The Last Day of Pompeii, caused a sensation when it toured Europe, its theatrical lighting and emotional intensity making viewers feel they were witnessing the catastrophe firsthand. But it was a novel that truly cemented the story in the popular mind. In 1834, Edward Bulwer-Lytton published The Last Days of Pompeii, a melodramatic tale of love, betrayal, and Christian virtue set against the erupting mountain. Though wildly historically inaccurate, the book was a phenomenal bestseller, translating the archaeological finds into a gripping human drama everyone could understand. It established the enduring template, the volcano as a divine judge, wiping away a corrupt society while preserving moments of poignant beauty. This fascination was fueled by a very real pilgrimage, the Grand Tour. For wealthy young Europeans, particularly the British, a journey to Italy was the climax of their education, and after the excavations began, no stop was more essential than Pompeii. Travelers would descend into the dusty, sun-baked streets, guided by torchlight to see the provocative frescoes and the haunting casts. They would collect souvenirs, often fragments of painted plaster, and write breathless letters home about the profound sensation of walking through a city of the dead. This direct encounter with antiquity had a seismic impact on art and design back home, fueling the neoclassical movement. The clean lines, mythological themes, and frescoed patterns discovered on Pompeian walls began to appear in drawing rooms from London to St. Petersburg. Furniture, pottery, and entire architectural styles were inspired by finds from the ash. Pompeii became more than a ruin, it was a tastemaker, proving that the ancient world was not just white marble, but a place of vibrant color and surprisingly modern elegance. The 20th and 21st centuries traded oil paintings for film reels and pixels, but the allure remained potent. The disaster genre found its perfect subject. The iconic 1959 film, The Last Days of Pompeii, starring Steve Reeves, blended muscle-bound gladiators with spectacular, if technically limited, special effects of the eruption. It was a formula that repeated in countless documentaries and mini-series, each new generation applying its own technology to visualize the mountain's wrath. But the story also found a home in more unexpected places. Video games like the Assassin's Creed series have allowed players to literally run through a meticulously reconstructed, burning Pompeii, interacting with its panicked citizens. This interactive experience creates a new form of empathy, making the player an active participant in the escape. Even music and opera have drawn from its themes, using the eruption as a metaphor for overwhelming passion or societal collapse. So why does this nearly 2,000-year-old disaster hold such a relentless grip on us? The answer lies in its unique combination of scale and intimacy. It is a story of cosmic power, a mountain tearing itself apart, which satisfies our awe for the destructive forces of nature, yet simultaneously, it is achingly personal. We are not looking at the bones of kings in a tomb, but at a loaf of bread in an oven, a warning about a dog on a floor, a piece of graffiti about a crush on a gladiator. This bridge to ordinary life makes the catastrophe imaginable, and therefore far more terrifying. It transforms the victims from faceless numbers into neighbors. Furthermore, the perfect preservation creates a tantalizing illusion of time travel. We feel we can almost touch the past, that we could have been there, which makes the sudden interruption of all that life profoundly unsettling. Pompeii holds up a mirror, asking us what of our own world would be preserved in a sudden end, and what our own final moments might look like, frozen for future generations to ponder. The volcano did more than bury a city. It created the ultimate memento mori, a reminder of mortality written not in stone, but in the hollow spaces where people once breathed. The haunting plaster casts give a powerful, but dangerously simplified, impression. We see them and imagine a single, cataclysmic instant, a city flash frozen by rivers of lava. This is perhaps the most persistent myth of all, a dramatic fiction that obscures the slower, more complex horror of that day. The people of Pompeii and Herculaneum were not turned to stone by molten rock. Lava flows, while destructive, move slowly enough to outrun. What killed them was something far more insidious and swift, the volcanic ash and the pyroclastic surges. The casts themselves are molds formed in the ash that buried them, and the body positions locked by extreme heat, not by solidifying lava. This distinction is crucial. It speaks to the very physics of the disaster, a multi-stage siege rather than a single strike. That siege unfolded not in a minute, but over a full day and night, a drawn-out ordeal that makes the story more tragic, not less. The initial explosion occurred around 1 in the afternoon. For the next 12 hours or more, Pompeii was pelted by falling pumice, a relentless, suffocating rain that collapsed roofs and blocked doors. This was a window for escape, and a great many people used it. The evidence is in the numbers. Only around 2,000 bodies have been found in a city of over 10,000. The majority of the population likely fled during those initial hours, grabbing what they could and streaming out of the city gates, becoming the forgotten survivors of the catastrophe. They carried the trauma with them, resettling elsewhere and leaving their homes to be buried. The final, lethal pyroclastic surges did not arrive until the early hours of the next morning, claiming those who had stayed behind, whether out of hope, duty, or because they were trapped. This long timeline also debunks the Hollywood image of a unified, panicked crowd staring at an advancing wall of fire. The reality was fractured and isolating. For those who remained, the experience was one of deepening dread and confusion, spent huddled in dark, shaking rooms as the world outside vanished under deepening gray. They died at different times and in different ways, depending on their location and the phase of the eruption. This protracted narrative is vital. It restores human agency and choice to the story, replacing a simplistic spectacle with a more respectful and far more frightening account of a community facing an unimaginable crisis. Even the artifacts we so confidently interpret can lead us astray. Take the famous mosaic with the phrase cave canem, beware of the dog. We see a lively canine and read it as a charming ancient security sign. But some scholars suggest it might not represent a guard dog at all, but a prized hunting or companion animal, its image meant to convey the owner's refined tastes rather than a simple warning. Similarly, the erotic art in the so-called brothel was long taken as salacious proof of Roman decadence. Modern analysis sees it more as functional signage for a largely illiterate clientele and a reflection of a culture with a vastly different attitude toward sexuality, one that was more openly integrated into daily commerce and religion. Our modern sensibilities can easily project onto the past, turning complex cultural symbols into simple, often judgmental, caricatures. This projection was at its most destructive during the early excavation. The Bourbon treasure hunters of the 1700s were not just careless, they were actively deceptive. Knowing their royal patron prized risque finds, they would sometimes move erotic frescoes from modest homes into the more elaborate villas they were uncovering, creating a false narrative of ubiquitous vice among the elite. They also practiced selective restoration, rebuilding walls or adding features to make a ruin more picturesque for wealthy tourists on the Grand Tour. These acts, driven by greed and a desire to please, fabricated a version of Pompeii that was part authentic, part fantasy, a distortion that took generations of careful archaeology to untangle. It forces us to ask, how much of what we think we know about the past is shaped by the biases and agendas of those who first brought it to light? The volcanic ash preserved the city, but human hands have been editing its story ever since. Pompeii's ultimate gift is not a single artifact, but an entire world held in suspension. This unique time capsule offers something no history book ever can, an unfiltered, street-level view of the Roman Empire at its peak. We see its architecture not as ruins, but as functioning homes and shops. We understand its social hierarchy not from laws, but from the stark contrast between a banker's villa and a slave's quarters. The city's economy, from the fish sauce factories to the bustling forum, reveals the intricate mechanics of daily life that powered an empire. It shows us a society of astonishing sophistication and mundane routine, where advanced plumbing ran alongside open-air laundries that reeked of urine. This is the Roman world with the marble polish scrubbed off, vibrant, flawed, and utterly human. The lesson here is about the texture of history itself, reminding us that civilizations are not built by emperors and armies alone, but by bakers, bankers, and the people who simply live their lives. What does the graffiti on your wall say about your world? Pompeii's answer is written in charcoal on every corner, yet this profound snapshot also speaks to our deepest vulnerabilities. The city is a monument to human resilience, yes, but also to our profound capacity for denial. The people rebuilt after a devastating earthquake. They adapted, they thrived. But they missed the mountain's warnings because they lacked the framework to understand them. Their story is a cautionary tale about the gap between human perception and planetary forces, a gap that modern science has narrowed but never fully closed. It forces us to ask, what are the Vesuvius scale threats we live with today, geopolitical, climatic, or viral, that we have normalized into the background of our own lives? The ash teaches us that civilization is fragile, a delicate balance that can be reset in a single day by the indifferent power of nature. This brings us to a pressing, modern dilemma, the ethical responsibility of preservation. The very act of uncovering Pompeii began its second death. Sunlight fades the brilliant frescoes that volcanic ash protected for centuries. Footsteps from millions of tourists erode the ancient paving stones. Rain and pollution seep into the exposed ruins. We are loving the site to death. The challenge is monumental. How do we share this irreplaceable treasure with the world while ensuring it survives for future generations? It is a race against time and tourism, requiring a constant, costly ballet of conservation, digital archiving, and visitor management. Every decision, from limiting access to certain houses to using non-invasive scanning technologies, is a statement of value, a promise to the past that we will be better stewards than the Bourbon treasure hunter. The story of Vesuvius, then, is not locked in the first century. It is a living conversation between past and present. It asks us how we remember, what we choose to save, and how we face the unpredictable forces that shape our existence. The silent streets of Pompeii are a mirror, and what we see reflected back is not just ancient Rome, but our own world, our own fragility, and our enduring quest to leave a mark that outlasts the ash. For all we have learned, the silence of the ash still holds its secrets. The mountain gave us a perfect snapshot, yet left behind a series of profound and tantalizing riddles. First, the question of timing. We know the eruption began around 1 in the afternoon on August 24th. But why that day? Why that hour? Volcanology can explain the buildup of pressure over centuries. but the final trigger, the last grain of sand that tipped the scales, remains elusive. Was it a final, critical shift in the magma chamber, a specific seismic tremor that fractured the last bit of rock holding everything back? Scientists continue to analyze the layers, searching for chemical clues in the pumice that might reveal the volcano's final, fatal side before the cataclysm. Then, there is the question of scale. We have found around 2,000 victims in Pompeii and hundreds more in Herculaneum, but ancient sources suggest a far greater regional death toll, perhaps 20,000. Where are the rest? Many undoubtedly fled and survived, but countless others may still lie in undiscovered villas in the countryside or under the modern city of Naples itself, which sits atop older volcanic deposits. Every time a new subway line is dug or a foundation is laid, archaeologists hold their breath, wondering if they will encounter another forgotten pocket of the disaster. The most tantalizing mystery sits in a laboratory, those carbonized scrolls from Herculaneum. We have decoded a few words, proving it can be done, but what complete works, what lost philosophies or epic poems, are waiting inside those 1,800 blackened lumps? The potential is staggering, a library frozen in time, offering the chance to recover voices silenced for millennia. Could we find a lost history, a scientific treatise, or even a personal diary from the era? The technology to read them is now in our hands, but the work is painstakingly slow, a letter, a word, a sentence at a time, and this leads to perhaps the most haunting gap of all. We have Pliny the Younger's account from across the bay, a priceless narrative, but what would we give for a single, scribbled note from someone inside Pompeii during those final hours? A merchant writing a last line to his family as the pumice fell, a priest's final prayer scratched onto a wall, a soldier's report on the collapsing city gates. No such document has ever been found. The very conditions that preserved the city also prevented such last-minute messages from surviving, as ink on papyrus would have vaporized in the heat. This absence is a palpable silence within the silence. Yet, the search never ends. Modern researchers are using muon tomography, a technique that uses cosmic rays to create X-ray-like images of dense structures, to scan for hidden chambers in the ruins of Herculaneum, perhaps even an undiscovered lower level of the Villa dei Papyri. Botanists are studying the carbonized seeds and pollen to reconstruct the exact climate and agricultural conditions of that fatal year. Each unanswered question is not an end, but a beginning, a thread pulling us deeper into the story. What do you think the next great discovery will be? A new cache of scrolls, a perfectly preserved ship in the ancient harbor, or perhaps something entirely unforeseen, waiting just beneath the next layer of volcanic rock, ready to rewrite our understanding of that day once more? The journey from a sunlit Roman morning to a world buried in ash is one of history's most profound stories. We began with a bustling, ordinary day in the Bay of Naples, where people lived without fear of the fertile mountain above them. We witnessed the mountain's catastrophic awakening, a multi-stage siege of pumice and searing gas that erased cities in a single terrible night. We followed the courage of Pliny the Elder and the terrified observations of his nephew, which gave the disaster a human voice and a precise timeline. For centuries, the city slept, their memory fading into legend, until the accidental strike of a pickaxe in 1748 began a new chapter, one of treasure hunting, scientific revelation, and ultimately, profound understanding. Through plaster casts and carbonized wood, through vibrant frescoes and candid graffiti, we have walked the streets of a living, breathing society. We have met its bankers and bakers, seen its laundries and brothels, and felt a chilling touch of forensic science revealing how life ended in an instant of extreme heat. This epic narrative circles back to three enduring truths. First, the awesome, indifferent power of nature. Vesuvius was not angry or vengeful. It was simply a geological process, a pressure valve releasing with apocalyptic force, reminding us that the ground beneath our feet is never truly still. Second, the breathtaking fragility of civilization. A sophisticated, connected, and vibrant world can be silenced in a day, its laws, commerce, and art buried under a gray shroud. Yet from that fragility springs the third truth, the incredible, paradoxical gift. The very force that destroyed Pompeii and Herculaneum perfectly preserved them, granting us an unparalleled window into antiquity. This is the dual legacy of Vesuvius, a grave and a time capsule, a tragedy and a treasure. It asks us to look at our own world and wonder what would remain of us. What stories would our streets tell? The conversation with the past is not over. New technologies are reading carbonized scrolls and scanning for hidden chambers, promising more secrets to uncover. So we turn the question to you: what aspect of this story resonates most deeply? Is it the haunting plaster casts, the vibrant art frozen in time, the science of the eruption, or the eerie parallels to our own modern vulnerabilities? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to join more journeys into the heart of ancient mysteries, be sure to subscribe. The past has so much more to say.